Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise podcast with Dan and Dawna Wilson. In episode 9 of Power Player Pastors of Kootenai County, we are going through a taped conversation, allowing you to listen to the actual conversation with a local pastor, revealing his involvement in politics, especially as it relates to the sheriff race in 2024. While releasing this audio is controversial, and it's going to flat out anger some people in the church community, what this does is it exposes the mishandling of spiritual authority, the bullying tactics being used against candidate Dan Wilson, and the doublespeak from the pastor as to where his alliances and loyalties are in relationship to political power players like Sheriff Bob Norris and County Commissioner Bruce Mattare. Now here's Dan to give us a brief recap in this series, episodes 1 through 8, and then to begin unraveling where we're going in this episode.
We started these episodes, number 1 through 8, exposing what we call power player pastors of Kootenai County. And in episode 1, we discussed the pastor of probably the most politically active church in Kootenai County, Coeur d'Alene area, and his gaslighting, his emails, the fact that I didn't kiss his ring as to why he wouldn't give me the time of day, some of the projecting that he did. Followed up by episodes 2 through 8, where we legally obtained recordings of conversations with this pastor and parishioners, and specifically their meeting, not only on the phone, but also an in-person meeting where the parishioner thought they were just getting together with their pastor, and a former federal agent was inserted into the mix. And so those 7 episodes, go over the transcripts of the video recorded conversations that took place. You'll see exactly how this pastor likes to play both sides and thinks a lot of himself, thinks that he's a very important person. And Dan Wilson should have done everything I could to get his attention, wined and dined him, taking him out for steak dinner. The Fed came in and ran roughshod over top of the parishioners and played good cop, bad cop. We want to know whether or not this federal agent is still active, because this federal agent is involved in all sorts of things in Kootenai County, including resilience groups, the local GOP, the helicopter program, and so many others. So you'll want to listen to episodes 1 through 8. We're going to come back and talk about that pastor again, because we brought some outside consultants in to discuss some of what was being said for a fresh set of eyes. Mm-hmm. And we're going to, in a future broadcast, we're going to go over that email of the assessment that church leader who specializes in abusive pastors, what he has to say about the words of that pastor. And we're going to pick that back up here in the not too distant future. But today, this episode has been long coming. Unfortunately, it is a recording that we have decided to release in its entirety, and it's about 40 minutes long. So you're going to want to get your popcorn out, get a good drink, maybe a good cigar, because this is going to be a long episode. Unlike the other ones, the previous 1 through 8 episodes, where we cut it down to about 30 to 40 minute episodes. This one we decided needs to run in its entirety. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think to keep train of thought and to keep a smooth flowing, more linear conversation, it was necessary to do that this way.
Yeah. So I want you to be aware that at one point the F-bomb is going to be dropped. Yes, I said the F word in my conversation to the pastor, and you'll get a chance to hear the context of that. And really, the intent of this is to, once again, draw attention to bad behavior by pastors who should know better, that are heavily involved with the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee in different aspects, not only donors, but also involved in the organization. One sat on the vetting committee for candidates. But this really started back in March.
And I want to say it is our duty to expose these things because Dan was in a unique position having run for office, which is something most people in a lifetime don't ever do. And there was really no way, I believe, to be privy to a lot of what's going on in local politics, who the power players are, and some of the things under the covers really that are extremely concerning. And short of you running for office as a conservative, there really would be no way to know that. And so once you were in that realm, you've got some choices. It is now your duty and responsibility. I do want to say, I think some people are going to have trouble moving forward in this conversation with you if we can't first hear you tell us in your words, why in the world do you make it a practice of recording conversations that people assume are private? Why in the world did you record this conversation? That right there was a heated topic of discussion, and it made people extremely angry with you. So why did you find it necessary to record it in the first place?
To protect myself. I have said this over and over again. The most static, the most abuse that I experienced during the campaign was from so-called local Republicans and church leaders. So this one was a one-off. Something just told me I needed to record it. During this whole event, it was in the very early stages of the campaign. And I had been putting out my videos against Bob Norris and Bruce Mattare's questionable actions. And there were two. One specifically was Bob Norris's continual crying and wanting to know what his real disability from Los Angeles was. We know that he's on over $187,000 a year disability retirement from Los Angeles County. And he was so emotional. We have a collage of videos that we showed him crying over mundane things and getting angry at people and having blowups. So, I was asking the question, is he mentally, what is the term of his retirement disability? What are the requirements? In other words, what are the restrictions? And is he suitable to be sheriff? So that was one. The second one was the special deputization that County Commissioner Bruce Mattare received from Bob Norris. Now, a little background again for those that don't know this, but Bruce Mattare came from Washington, D.C. up to Idaho, around 2013, give or take. And he hooked up with Bob Norris. Bob Norris ran for sheriff in 2020. Bob Norris came from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Bruce was Bob's campaign manager. After Bob Norris won the election in 2020 and was sworn in 2021, he gave Bruce a special deputization. Later on, Bruce becomes an elected county commissioner and retained the special deputization, and he still currently, as of 2024, still has this deputization. And he's the only one of 3 county commissioners that has this. And I've said over and over again, and as I did in this video, I questioned how a politician can have access to privileged information that other politicians don't normally get access to. Is he loyal to the sheriff, or is he loyal, the way the separation of power is supposed to be, as a, quote, legislator, county commissioner, one that sets rules and funds the sheriff's office? And so during this time, that made Bob Norris extremely upset. Rather than come out and answer the questions, which he would never do, he decides to make an event. And he did a Saul Alinsky tactic where he targeted a situation. And the target was me daring to ask the questions. And he then froze it. Said, Dan Wilson is doing X, Y, and Z. And then he came out and he personalized it. Dan Wilson is personally attacking me and my integrity and Bruce Mattare as elected officials. And then he polarized it by demanding that I show up to a trial that he was going to have with not only County Commissioner Bruce Mattare, but also a former prosecuting attorney, Bryant Bushling, at an event where I was demanded to go there. And if I was able to prove to a law enforcement standard that he had committed a crime, there is the problem right there, folks. I never said he committed a crime, but he was telling people that I was going around accusing him of committing crimes. And if I could, to a law enforcement standard, prove that he had committed these crimes, then he was going to donate $1,000 to a charity that takes care of abused children.
I'm going to put you on pause right there, because the original question, and I do believe you're answering this, but I want to explain this for our listeners. The original question was, why in the world would you record this conversation with the pastor? Do you make a practice of doing that when somebody assumes, hey, this is a private conversation? You quickly answered that and said, well, it was self-protection,
Right.
self-preservation.
Right.
And then you've gone into this explanation to give background, which I think is absolutely necessary, because the reality is in this running for this political office against Sheriff Bob Norris, you kicked a hornet's nest.
I did.
Which you had no way of knowing in the beginning the size, the sheer magnitude of what was going to come out of this. And so you started to wise up very quickly as to the people involved, how this pastor was involved with both Sheriff Bob Norris, Bruce Mattare, these political power players, and that the pastor was somewhat then protecting these guys as they were moving toward hosting this event and creating a circus, an absolute circus out of this, which was polarizing the community. Isn't that? And that's kind of where you left.
And Associate Pastor John Padula was at that time, back in March, running for county commissioner on the Republican ticket. And he is an associate pastor of Tim Remington at the Altar Church. And he and I were talking on a regular basis. I thought we were friends. He came up to you and I at an event right after the Lincoln Day dinner, which we did not attend, but we were at an after party. And he said, hey, just so you know, Bob and Bruce came in and they were, pressuring me, wanting to know why they had allowed me
into his
as
office.
a candidate
So
into his office.
Okay, so Bob Norris, Bruce Mattare come into Padula's
office,
okay.
as I was told.
All right.
And they were angry that the Altar Church had allowed me at the end of January to hold my town hall, where you and I shared what had happened at the border when we went down and saw firsthand all the military-age males that were coming across the border. And they were angry. And as they were getting on John in this conversation, how dare they let Dan Wilson come in and use the church, John slipped and he said, by the way, they were playing your videos. And Bruce Mattare, who is a county commissioner, D.C. Mattare, came from Washington, D.C. before he became a county commissioner. He's playing one of my videos. And as my video is playing, I imagine it's probably on Facebook or Instagram.
So these guys are in Padula's office, and on one of their phones, they pull
playing,
up your video off of Instagram. How dare you
let this guy? He's not noble. He's not royalty. He can't run for sheriff. And Mattare was making a choking, shaking motion with his hands clasped together as if he wanted to choke me out for what I was saying on those videos. So fast forward, Bob demands that we go to this setup. It wasn't a town hall. It was not a official debate, which we've been calling for. It was an ambush. Once again, he personalized it and he polarized it. And instead of coming out and just answering the question saying, hey, here's my medical history, here's what my restrictions are, here's what my disability is, which he could easily do very quickly, he refused. And instead, he doubled down. He also said that I was accusing Bruce and him of committing felonies. Never said that. So they lied. And what happened was they set this event up at the Altar Church. And once they published this event, which went out on Facebook, it went out on Instagram, it went on all sorts of different social media platforms, demanding that I attend this meeting, this event, I started getting phone calls and messages from my supporters going, hey, why is the Altar Church allowing this to go on? Well, I don't know. You call and ask them. So Tim Remington had been contacted by numerous individuals that wanted to know why the altar was going to allow that event to take place. So I received a phone call and I talked with John, and John was like, yeah, we didn't know what was going to really be going on. Bob came in and said he wanted the Altar Church at this date and time in February, or I guess it was March, for a town hall. We didn't know that it was going to be an actual put Dan Wilson on trial event.
Which is, and I can see to their defense, nobody's going to question that because it's very commonplace that politicians or people running for office host town halls, and the Altar Church, to their credit, has offered their facility in order to allow those community events and facilitate those.
So I received a phone call from Pastor Tim. I don't recall if I called him first or he called me, but it was decided that we were going to mutually discuss this. And it was on a Friday. And the pastor, in our conversation, which I did not record, he was saying, hey, you know, I didn't know that this was going to happen, and I'm going to try to shut this down. I'm going to talk to Bob, and this isn't right. And, you know, I can't let people know that Bob came in here under false pretenses and you know, didn't tell the truth. And, you know, are you interested in a debate or whatever else? And I said, well, yeah, a debate, but not on this date and time, because it had already been advertised as, you know, this event, show your proof. And oh, by the way, as I was recalling earlier, the $1,000 donation, if I was able to prove that Bob Norris had committed a felony, he was going to give this $1,000 to this charity for abused children. Well, that was a shot across the bow to me because of my ex-wife's daughter, who accused me, had lied that I had abused her back in the, 20 years ago. And
that came out right toward the beginning of the campaign to try to crush you out of the gate.
And we do know later on that Bob and Bruce Mattare colluded with my ex-wife on that, but that's a different story. So there was all of these extremely below the belt actions that Bob Norris was taking. He demanded that I come to this event in his official capacity under the color of law. So it wasn't, hey, candidate Bob Norris challenges candidate Dan Wilson. It's Sheriff Bob Norris challenges Dan Wilson. You will be here on this date and time. So back to the conversation. The very first conversation that I had with the pastor, he was pretty adamant that, he was not going to allow shenanigans to take place, and he was going to square it away, and he'd get back to me the following Monday to let me know what was going on.
Because in that first conversation that you had with the pastor, you probably felt a bit of a sense of release, relief that, oh, he's hearing me out. Yeah. He's truly understanding what the problem is, that this was misrepresented as a simple town hall. It's definitely not a debate.
Right.
And he was following your logic at minimum.
He didn't get back to me on that Monday. In fact, it was almost a week later. And again, I'm getting a lot of the same phone calls. People are demanding to know why the altar, who they trusted, would allow the shenanigans. Because if the folks saw what this event was going to be, it was pretty bad.
It was. The tone, they could tell that the tone of this.
It was a setup.
This is not normal. Yeah. This isn't normal behavior from community leaders, let alone your top law enforcement official. It was childish. It was schoolyard, like behind the gym, behind the barn bullying.
Right.
I mean, it was disconcerting to people, and it set off all kinds of alarms for anybody with half a brain.
Right.
That,
Well, so I believe that the pastor, as I recall, had said that he was going to talk to his board. Well, as the week went on, I talked with John, and John and I had a pretty frank conversation, and he said the board could not meet in time to cancel this or to make the demands on Norris, so they were going to allow the event to take place, and that I needed to talk to Tim.
Okay.
So I called Tim to get his perspective, since he had not returned my call, or he did not return the call that he said he was going to the previous Monday, and it went to voicemail. So later on, as you and I were working, I get a call from him, and I was prompted, because there was so much squirrely stuff going on, and I was tired of being lied about continually. I decided, for my own purpose, not to share with anybody else, but my own purpose, I wanted to make certain that I was correct when I recalled what people were saying to me about this situation.
Okay.
So fast forward to the phone call that did take place. I did record it, and within hours of that conversation, I'm getting calls from people in the community saying, why did you cuss out Pastor Tim? It was going all over the whole area that I had somehow got into a confrontation with Pastor Tim, yelled, screamed, cussed him out. And I'm going, that never happened. You were there with me the entire time. It never happened.
Yeah.
And I thought about at that moment releasing the audio rather, and saying, hey, here's what the truth is. But I decided not to. And this was early on in March, and I just let it lie. And nothing happened again until September. And at the end of September, after a fundraiser that I had, I started getting people that went to that church coming up to me saying, we heard that you cussed out the pastor. And they started reignited it.
Okay.
And, we're getting now down to the last month of the campaign. And we know that people were smearing me again, attempting to get me out of the race. They were trying to inflict as much damage as they could. And I was attempting to tell people, that's not what happened. I did not cuss the pastor out, and I'll sit down and talk with you if you want to. And unfortunately, it was like a wildfire. It was spreading all over. I was getting emails. I was getting text messages. People were really upset with me. And so I sent a letter, an email to Pastor Tim, which I'm going to read now. And this letter was sent after an attempt by an intermediary individual that knows both of us, wanted to set up a personal meeting, and said that, we can't meet for over 2 weeks. I said, well, we don't have 2 weeks.
Okay. So you had the urgency because the countdown to the election day was rapidly approaching.
I sent this, and I'm going to read it in its entirety. I sent it on September 30th. I said, Pastor Tim, because lies have continued to spread regarding my private conversations with you from last March, there is an urgency to either have this conversation now or to go public with the information that I have. Pastor Tim, you have evidently repeated certain things that specifically about me that you said happened during our phone call. You have allowed the misrepresentation of the facts to go unchecked for months. Of course, a byproduct of this, whether it was intentional or not, is that my political opposition continues to use this gossip as a point of attack on my character. Originally, my intent was to urge you to make a public statement regarding the misleading and dishonesty of Bob Norris regarding the event he scheduled at the Altar Church. With our conversation, you admitted that Bob lied to you regarding the nature of this event. Not only were you unwilling to make a public statement at that time regarding Bob Norris's actions, but there was also much more revealed within that conversation regarding Bob Norris and Bruce Mattare that it would appear, unfortunately, you are continuing to protect. It would be most certainly in your best interest to meet on or prior to Friday, October 4th at location to be determined. I stand firmly on the truth of what was contained within that phone conversation between me and you, and the truth will be revealed. So then I gave him a couple times that week that I was available. And I sent that to both Pastor Tim Remington and Pastor John Padula. And here's a response that I got back later on that day from Pastor Tim. He says, wow, are you two still acting this way? I won't get involved with your play, my friends. It's childish. You both do nothing but bash the other one.
What? And he says you two are still acting this way. Who's he referring to?
I would assume Bob Norris and I guess. I don't know.
Okay. So he's establishing himself as being stuck in the middle between you and Bob Norris, as he had, and painting it as though he had no control over whether or not he was stuck in the middle. Yeah. Okay.
So we are now 2 days later after this email. In one of my live broadcasts for the campaign that I did weekly, I did a shot across the bow, and I released two quotes by him about the interference by the KCRCC members. They were short, but to the point, and it was my intent to place a shot across the bow to say, hey, yes, I have this full recording.
Your lies are being spread about me, and the reason that I can tell you this with 100% certainty is I have the proof.
And there was no action. In fact, I got a bunch more blowback. How dare you do this? I'm not voting for you now. Well, I'm so disappointed.
And that was a bold move on your part, because you knew you were risking, okay, not only am I demonstrating that I have the proof and these guys are in fact lying about me, but I have now revealed the fact that I recorded a conversation. And so then there was all kinds of questions coming out about your character and how dare you.
Right. So a short time later, Jen Noel, who is one of my supporters, had a conversation with John Padula via text. And they were going back and forth because John Padula was definitely anti-Dan Wilson. He had made quotes to some of the ladies that were on our team that they were risking their reputation by being associated with me, urging them not to be part of my campaign because it was going to hurt their reputation. And Jen and him are going back and forth. And here's what John says in his text message. We don't owe Dan anything. Why doesn't he play the whole tape on his podcast where he yells the F word and bull blank at pastor? Why does he only play part of it out and try to twist what was said? So, challenge accepted. I attempted to call John Padula several weeks prior to this just to set the record straight on a few other things that I was being accused of with him. He did not return the phone call. Apparently he was out of voicemail space and hunting and wasn't able to get back. But I did eventually talk to him, and we had a pretty frank conversation. He was extremely upset.
You and Padula.
Yeah, Padula and I, over the phone. We did not record that. No. But he was very, very upset. He said he wouldn't vote for me for 1,000,000 years. That
no,
my integrity
for $1 million.
$1 million. Thank you.
Yeah.
Told me that my reputation was soiled because, how dare I release or record a pastor in a conversation? I kept telling him, look, I've got the entire recording and we're going to play this here shortly so you can hear it firsthand. To hear that the law of the speculation that I was being accused of cussing the pastor out, shouting, screaming at him. Apparently, the pastor was talking to me on a phone in his vehicle. At some point, he transitioned into his office. While he got into his office, the secretary heard yelling and screaming and swearing, is what John tells us. So the secretary told John he needed to get in there and listen. And that's when he heard me cussing out the pastor. Mm-hmm. And John admitted in his text message that, he did tell people that I cussed the pastor out. He says, not to mention the only people I've told about hearing and yelling at pastor profanities was most of my campaign team and maybe 15 or 20 people that I'm close to that were asking me why I'm not publicly supporting Dan. But I've been telling everybody what's going on with Mattare and Norris and have not been quiet about that at all. So I kept trying to tell him, look, I have the full recording. I know what was said. I at no time was demanding that Tim not hold this event. At no time was I making any demands on him. It was just a general conversation, which we're going to listen to. But unfortunately, John didn't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. John didn't want to go back and set the record straight. He said, well, I'll go back because, you didn't say bull ass. You didn't say bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I'll correct the record on that.
Well, it's interesting to see how once people, and because we have the proof of this, we can state factually, but I was able to observe John Padula being absolutely convinced, and I think he was absolutely convinced of the string of expletives that you used and the events or the conversation leading to and surrounding you, quote, cussing the pastor out. And he was convinced. And even when you said, John, I have this whole thing on recording, that it didn't happen. He was relentless.
He was.
He still wouldn't concede.
And I even challenged him. I said, look, you're a pastor. I'm a man that professes Christ. We got together and we prayed together at the very beginning of the campaign back in, January, February. If you thought that I had done this, why did you not first come to me and say, Wilson, why did you cuss out the pastor? Why did you do these things, which I didn't do, but why didn't you come to me before you start telling your 15 to 20 friends and campaign staff?
Well, and that's the part that just is baffling to me.
Well, these pastors do this all the time.
Yes.
They want to hold one line and say, you're not being biblical, godly, or integrous, but then they completely wash the other side completely white.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, clearly the pastor took a private conversation and made it public by putting it on speakerphone. And we know of several people at minimum that were privy to that conversation, but there could be more. We don't know. And it's not like that was disclosed. No. And what was the net result of that? The net result was they all went off. Everybody was present, ran their mouth. Yep. And it's like, well, no, now we're going to point the finger at Dan Wilson because how dare it might be legal for him to do that, but that was unethical. Yeah. And I'm like,
no integrity. No integrity was what I was told. I have no integrity is what John told me.
And I'm like, and you were acting in integrity when you were running your mouth?
Well, in fact, I pointed out to him, I said, look, when you were running and Bruce Mattare did his hit piece email where he completely bagged on you because of your background and you know your previous criminal and drug use and all those things and not having a very good education. I came out publicly, the only person running for office that publicly came out and defended John against Bruce Mattare and Bob Norris. And John's basically flippant response was, well, you know what? Basically, so what? That wasn't a big deal. I had a career, a criminal career prior in another life.
Well, not only that, for you, ultimately they don't care about you doing the right thing. What they cared about was there's no value in Dan Wilson actually doing the right thing because you don't have anything to offer them. Yeah. If they had nothing to gain from you, then none of that mattered. And that's why we're here today and this needs to be exposed because you need to understand that is what's happening with your church leaders. When they didn't stand anything to gain from a guy named Dan Wilson, it didn't matter when Dan was trying to set the record straight, trying to do the right thing, trying to keep integrity in a conversation, trying to stay loyal to a guy, Padula, that he confided in or saying, hey, I expected more out of you. But it didn't matter because you were nothing to them in terms of being able to further their place in the community or their potential elected position.
Yeah. So we are going to now air this 40-something minute conversation that took place. We're going to stop it. We're going to discuss things so that you can sidebar and kind of know some of the backstory. But yeah, hey, Pastor John, this is specifically at your request. Why don't I play the entire recording? So we'll let you all listen to this. And yeah, here we go. This is Dan.
Mr. Wilson, sir.
Hey, Tim, how are you?
I'm hanging right in there.
Yeah.
Stay in business, all get out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling me.
You bet.
We left on Friday. We had our conversation on Friday, and rumor is that you're still going to allow Bob to continue with this little fiesta that he's doing.
Yes. Well, I mean, we all are. So the whole board said we were open for anybody that wants to have any type of town hall. He did. I did go to him, and I've been wasting a lot of time on this thing. And enough to where I'm a little torqued myself that I'm wasting so much time when I'm trying to open up buildings for people. So that's all I'm trying to do.
Who are you torqued with?
Oh, I took Bob and Bruce. Bruce came with him, which I didn't know, but I should have figured that out. But I'm just tired of the immaturity. But I took them both out to breakfast and said, listen, this is what you said. And they said, okay, well, that's what we'll do. He said, if he wants to come and he wants to just have the moderator there, and he even gave me the choice of choose somebody that knows law. And I said, well, I'll find somebody that knows law. I said, there's prosecutors and attorneys and whoever. But for somebody that knows law that could be there, I guess he said that you blamed him, that he did something against the law by letting Bruce have a badge to be able to get information that he wasn't supposed to get. And he said if he wants to come and tell the general public that that's what we did, then let him come. So, like I said, I'm getting tired of it myself, of wasted my time trying to do this. We've always opened our doors to pretty much anybody. He did tell me in the beginning that it was going to be a town hall, and it kind of turned out to be a blast stand thing. But he did say, and that's when I called you back, and I said he did say that if we could do this with a moderator there, then and I'd give those rules beforehand and just say that you can't have the Terrys and the people that are interrupting you all the time and stopping you from saying what you really want to say. Can't have that nonsense. If it's going to be a town hall, then it'll be an organized town hall. Otherwise, it won't be anything. And he said that he would agree to that. So,
well, the problem is that he has not taken down any of those promos. In fact, it's being spread around all of the different social medias. And here's my main contention with it. Number one, I'm not going to engage in this because it's a debate, not a trial. He is absolutely not telling the truth, and I've asked you to make him specifically prove where I've ever supposedly made these criminal allegations. He's paid to advertise that event. Are you aware of that?
see, I'm trying. Hold on one second.
Okay.
If I can do this. Okay. I put it up to my ear while I'm driving here.
So you're aware that he has paid to have that advertisement put out on social media, right? As the town hall, the show your proof, the trial, whatever it is. And you do understand that two things. One is he lied to you about what the original intent is. And apparently there's no consequences for that. He's supposed to be a man of truth. You're a man of truth. Number two, there is no place, and I'm surprised that you have not forced him to produce this claim that I have accused him of any criminal actions, because I can guarantee you, if I knew that he was absolutely guilty of a crime, the FBI, the state police, everybody would know, and they'd be slapping bracelets on him. So, you know, my concern on this is that the argument is you have to allow him to use it because of the 501c3. Okay,
no,
fine.
That's not an argument.
Well,
that's not an argument at all.
So
there is no argument with that. My argument with this whole thing is we've allowed our building to be open to when Senator Moon, or when Congressman Moon Legislative Moon and Senator, what's her name? Anyway, they had my brain. Mary Souza. Okay, they got into a thing and they decided that they were going to use the church to be able to actually get that out during the town hall, and everybody was upset. Now I'm in the middle of this thing. Why? Because I rented out a space, not rented, gave it to them free for them to have their town halls and for you to have your town hall.
Right.
And like I said, I'm just getting tired of letting our building being used for anything anymore. Because it seems like every time we give our building to this type of thing,
let's
and all I get is a bunch of childish, he said that and I said this. And
all right. So he calls and he's immediately the victim.
Yeah, that was, I mean, within the first couple sentences. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
I'm just stuck in the middle of this. I'm just trying to help everybody, and yeah, immediately turned it from taking any ownership for any part of it, as though somehow you don't have authority as the pastor, you don't have a say.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were originally told that they were not going to allow that event because they misled them. It wasn't going to be a town hall. It's going to be this trial. And then they came back and said, well, we have to allow it because of the 501c3 rule. We're a church, and since you, the opposing candidate, were there, we have to let them be there.
And that's what you were being jerked around. You didn't just come into this phone conversation to try to convince them not to do it. There's some confusion on your part because there was a preliminary conversation where they indicated they were going to put the brakes on and not allow it because Bob Norris had misled them as to what this was, what it was for.
And he said that he had gone and met with Bob, and Bruce showed up, and he should have known that. But one of the other things that they alluded to, and this is important for people as they're listening, he said, hey, you can still do this, Dan, and we'll make certain that the Terrys, and he's talking about Terry that's with the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, one of those that was adamantly opposing me, that was on the vetting committee for the endorsement, if you will, or the recommendation during the primary. He even admits it. He knows what has been going on with the KCRCC and their various players. So,
and I mean, you learn pretty early on in the conversation, okay, what happened was he met with Bob Norris. Mattare shows up, and instead of the pastor as the church leader drawing a line in the sand and saying, you lied to me, we're not doing this here. What you're hearing is he was influenced by these guys. And then that was then the direction of his conversation with you is, well, we can still do this, but they said they would change, and they'd make it a debate. And so we would meet your requests. And
it sounds like now both occasions, both when John Padula had them in his office and then when Tim went out to breakfast, Bruce is the talking. He's the mouthpiece. I mean, you're talking about the most powerful elected official in the county, the sheriff, and he never speaks for himself.
And we've told you guys this repeatedly, and we've been doing it for the last year. It is a problem that you've got Bruce Mattare, now county commissioner, that is following your sheriff, the highest elected official in your county, and following him around to speak on his behalf because Norris is not capable of standing on his own.
All roads lead to Mattare.
They do.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go ahead and finish.
He was there he was there again in the meeting with the pastor, and this is the common thread. Okay, I'm restarting the audio.
Pastor?
And
Pastor,
yes, sir.
Have I ever lied to you?
That has nothing to do with us giving our building out. No, you haven't lied to me.
Okay, so
No, I've never said you have.
The whole reason that we're having this discussion that you're having to field from multiple people, like you said, and you're frustrated, I get it, is solely because Bob Norris lied to you originally with the intent. What he did was he came in, secured the facility, then he and Bruce got together, concocted their challenge. They didn't consult anybody. They polarized it. They freezed the argument. They personalized it. Then they polarized it to get everybody whipped up into this false showdown. This whole thing that you're dealing with isn't because Dan Wilson has done anything to ever disrespect you or to be untruthful or lack integrity.
Correct.
This is solely this chaos that right now that you are experiencing is due to a man that is a dishonest individual with his other dishonest individual, Bruce and Bob together concocting this, and then other people are standing up and saying, this is not right. We could not even resurrect this as being an actual debate because he has already been on the record. It's paid advertised for well over a week that this is going to be a courtroom showdown, which is absurd on the face of it. There is nothing that we have ever said that is improper or that has not actually raised questions that an elected official, and let's say officials, both plural, should be providing these answers to the public. And in 2 months, those answers have never been actually addressed. So this whole thing that you're having to fight with right now, the impropriety of it all is 100% due to Bob and Bruce. And
Yes.
I believe that, again, I'm a man that every day strives to be righteous and to listen to the Lord and to make certain that he creates in me a clean heart every single day because I understand the nature of man. But I'm the kind of guy that also understands that the Lord loves justice and he hates liars. So my issue right now is, and I will not be attending this under any circumstances, but number two is that there should be a statement. My suggestion would be, because you are a fair man, and I know you're a fair man, that you would get so much credibility if you would come out and say, Bob came to you and did this under false pretense. You're going to allow him to use it, but the public needs to be aware that Bob was not truthful at the time that you gave him permission to use the church. That would go a long ways with me, Pastor.
Well, goes a long way. I went to Bob and I went to them, and they agreed that they would do exactly what they said they were going to do.
It's too late.
And
though.
so
it's too late.
Well,
he's already put it out, and he's paid to advertise it, that it's a trial. When was the last time
you would have to take that down if that's the case. Can you show me that, by the way? Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I'll send it to you here shortly. Let me see if I can do it while I'm talking to you. Stand by.
I don't have time to get involved in all of this stuff, even look this stuff up, man. This is just crazy. And that's what I told Bob. And by the way, I think it's more Bruce than Bob. I'll tell you that. When I sat with Bob, Bruce was the one that tried to answer all the questions. I had to, between Bob and I. Bob's the one that called.
Yeah. Well, and what does that say? That's the active sheriff. He's supposed to be the leader of the freest county in the United States, and he has Bruce Mattare do his own talking for him.
Well,
Pastor,
it is odd.
I was a police officer for 12 years. I very much understand the difference between an allegation versus an actual outright claim that somebody's committed a crime. Everybody's being played right now that buys off into this. They're buying off into
I'm not buying off into anything. I know politics like the back of my hand, buddy. But the problem is I've only agreed, half the people that have ever used our building. We use our building for these type of town halls, for these type of arguments. Even I can put it down, but I don't like to be lied to. That's for sure.
I agree.
Which is why I went to him.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shortly. I'll probably email it to you. What is your email address, if you don't mind? I'm going to send to you the paid advertisement that he did. We also filed an actual complaint with the Attorney General's office because Bob also in that challenge was wearing his uniform and his badge. So under the color of law, he is coercing a political opponent and using his authority as sheriff in an attempt to intimidate or coerce me into doing something. So this thing is going to get even bigger than what you realize right now. And I don't want the Altar Church's name on it, but I can't stop it.
Well, evidently I can't either. Because either way I go in this direction, they're going to say it was the Altar Church, whether it be Bob or you or all of that.
What's the biblical thing? What's the biblical? You're a pastor, so then what is the biblical solution to this? If you are acting in your full capacity as a man of God, which I know you are, how does a man of God handle this then?
There's a lot of stuff that biblically, if you want to go biblical, when I open up our building to be able to allow people to do this stuff, there's a lot of unbiblical things that are being said in these things. Yeah. So biblically, I would just shut down the church and not ever allow it to be used for these political events anymore. But that's where all of these things started years ago.
Right.
The church is
We're going to pause this right here. So a couple things. Right there, he deflects. I asked him, well, biblically, what do you do? And, how do you answer these things? And he comes back and he's like, well, biblically, there's a lot of things that happen that aren't biblical, and
a lot of things when they host events, people come in and there's a lot of things said in the course of these events that aren't biblical. So biblically, I would just shut it all down and never let anybody use the facility.
But he didn't answer the question.
No.
And he also, once again, admits that Bob lied to him.
Right.
So, there's so much that's going on that, it's important to dissect this as we're working through this conversation.
And some things that I picked up on, and I was there in the room with you having the conversation, because at times throughout the campaign, I did that just as another set of ears, right. and we worked so closely together on the campaign. That wasn't to put anybody else at a disadvantage by any means. It was just us as a unified force working together through the campaign. And so there were a couple of times in that conversation where, if I'm being objective, I observed you using some things that might be considered manipulative type language in the course of that conversation. And so when you and I have since dialogued about that, you were able to shed some light onto that, which I think is very important to highlight in part of this. So a couple of the things where you asked him you continue to try to redirect him.
Right.
And one of the things that you said was, pastor, and he finally took a breath and you said, have I ever lied to you?
Right.
And, you asked that question already knowing the answer. So then it's like, well, what direction are you trying to go with that? And are you trying to manipulate him in asking him that question? And one of the other things was when you said, well, I know that you're a fair man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like giving him the credit
right.
for being a fair man.
Which I believe that generally he is.
Right.
But I think it's important for me to reinforce that to him. I didn't want a confrontational conversation.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything I can to, keep it to the facts and just have the discussion. But it's clear he already went out. He had a conversation with both Bob and Bruce. They're still going to have it, but they'll turn it into a debate. It doesn't have to be this show you proof challenge. Meanwhile, for several weeks, they had already had the advertisement on Facebook and Instagram that they're paying. People were putting on their calendars. It was already all over chat rooms. People were already planning to go to this event.
They can't wait. It was like Jerry Springer type of proportions. Yeah. By this point in the conversation, did you realize this dude is literally trying to push me to show up to this thing? Yeah. Like, he is no longer listening to me. Yes. We're not really here having a negotiation about him setting the record straight, or if okay, do the event, but be bold enough to get up beforehand and make a statement or something like that. Did you realize that was already a lost cause and he was actually trying to push you, or were you still at the point in the conversation where you had hope that you could reason? Well,
I think at this point it's starting to become a reality that he's not going to let it go.
Okay.
I had no idea that the conversation was going to be one where he was going to be trying to coerce me into it. And
did you feel that? You're like, he is coercing.
As we're already into this, 10-minute plus conversation. Yes, because he's moving it from, I did meet with those guys, and instead of just saying, we're going to let them have it, they can do whatever they want, but I am going to make a statement that they didn't tell the truth, or Bob didn't tell the truth. In fact, it should be both of them. He didn't. He was saying, well, you can do this, and I can make certain that people like Terry don't interrupt you, and you know what, I can find somebody with a legal background. And I mean, why would you need a legal background for a debate? Which Bob Norris had refused for a good 4 to 6 weeks prior to that event to even acknowledge that we wanted a public debate prior to the primary, when at that time I was still running as a Republican, which during this conversation, I was still running as a Republican. Right. Shortly. In fact, I believe right after this conversation is when I fully decided that no, we're done, along with the vetting committee response that I received. So,
done running as a Republican.
Yeah, when I was going to change to an independent.
So I think you must have at some point, you've got to feel like this is somewhat going in circles.
Immediately.
You call the conversation. I mean, your understanding was they were either going to put a stop to the event and just say that you guys, you lied about what this event was, and you're just not going to hold it here. You're going to have to find a different venue.
Then he wants to insert, well, when we allow people to use this venue all the time, and when Dorothy Moon and Mary Sousa got together, they were bashing each other, and so basically all these events, and I'm like, bro, that's what happens when you have political events. People get to argue their points and discuss bad behavior. I don't understand this mentality, which is, well, people never have any arguments. There's never any opposition. They don't read their Bible very much, because Jesus was getting into it all the time with people over policies and the way that they behaved. But he's a victim. I mean, look, we're already into this how many minutes, and he's a victim. I'm stuck in the middle. Well, no, Pastor, you could have led, and you could have just said, here's what I told him. I'm going to make a statement that you were untruthful, because as the sheriff, you should be truthful. So I am going to allow you. Here's your choice. You can use the building for this event, whether Wilson shows up or not. But I am going to put out a disclaimer that says, you lied to me. I got together with you and I told you this, but he didn't even do that.
Yeah.
He wants to be this victim. And you know what? I'm just in the middle of this. And you know, I'm just opening up the building. So we'll go ahead and continue playing and stop it intermittently as well.
Yeah. I mean, what you start to learn is anybody with influence has big ideas about how they're going to stand up to Bob Norris and Bruce Mattare, and it never materializes. No. Oh, that's something that ends up being common.
This place to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't understand. I don't understand I do and I don't, of why you will not just go, you know what? I'm going to go against him on this. We're going to have a moderator. We're going to have them be the ones that determine how this is going to go. And they're going to ask the questions, and I'm going to be able to prove without interruption that this is what he said. This is what he did. This is what he illegally, if he's doing something illegal. People are sending me a bunch of stuff on you. They're sending me stuff on him, things that you have said. And I am not, this is crazy how we get the brunt of all this.
You only get in the brunt of it if you don't actually speak the truth, which is Bob lied about
the truth,
but to the public. To the public,
I have
though.
no problem doing that.
Would you actually make a public statement on it and put it in writing?
Sure.
Okay.
That Bob said that he was going to use, but I would also have to put, because I went and met with them, and because that's the proper thing to do.
Yep.
And
yeah, absolutely.
Met with them, and I would also have to put that I went with him, and he said.
Okay. So again, we have to listen to what's being said. He's turning it around. He's like, well, I can understand why you wouldn't do this, but, you know, I also think that you should. And, you know, I could get a moderator and, you know, so you can go over and say, well, you did this. And again, earlier he said that I made these allegations against Bob Norris. I told him I did not make allegations of criminal wrongdoing, because if I had proof, real proof, and had made an accusation that crimes had been committed instead of the unethical, immoral things that Bob and Bruce were doing and continue to do, then ISP or FBI or somebody else would be arresting them. So I already said that. And I said to him, nobody showed me any proof that I ever made a criminal accusation. It didn't, still to this day, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, he is a victim. And he was going to, I went and talked to Bob and Bruce, and, you know, I have no problem whatsoever making a statement. And he never did make that statement.
Well, and he didn't even finish what he was saying, that he has no problem making a statement, but I would also have to say that, and he redirected the conversation yet again. Yeah. And so just before this segment that we played, we talked about how he has spent the majority of this conversation getting off course and attempting to coerce you into showing up to this event. So rather than sticking to the point, which was don't allow the event, or if the event is allowed to go forward, make a statement
right
on behalf of the church leadership that it, you know, because you are now hosting a very controversial event based on a lot of false statements in this facility.
And he noted that he had been contacted by a lot of people that were upset about this, people with integrity that knew what Bob and Bruce were doing together. It was attempted, once again, them along with the KCRCC people, certain people in the KCRCC, to kill me before I could even get to the primary. And, you know, they were outraged and they were voicing it to Tim. And so Tim doesn't like the heat, apparently, because, well, people show me things that you said and they show me things that he said. Okay, what did I ever say that was untrue?
Mm-hmm.
Notice that they never can get to that point. So
no, he never did. None of the pastors involved ever do. And when Bob and Bruce eventually hold their event, they never do either.
No.
I mean, it gets all the way to the stage and they still never do it. And there are those people who are stupid enough to not figure out what's playing out right in front of your eyes. You're ready to continue. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
But you're not wrong.
That he would be okay with a moderator to meet you for an actual town hall, and that's what I would have to put too. So how does that look for you now?
Well, here's how I would answer this. Let's say that you're pastor, let's say that somebody accused you of an extramarital affair. And they said, we are going to have a summit because you've been accused of an extramarital affair. And you're like, I've never committed an affair in my life. Well, you got to come in here and we're gonna place our evidence and we're gonna let people decide for themselves and we're gonna give money to a charity. And then you're like, well, absolutely, I'm not going to show up to it because I've never done anything. Why would I have to answer to that? And then they say, well, you know what? Let's change it. Let's just sit down and have a conversation. We're going to invite the entire public around and we're going to sit in a room. We're going to get to know you a little bit better and we're going to have people ask you questions on the same date and time. That's in essence what they have done. The reason is not because I am afraid, because I tell you, of anybody in this entire county, I have zero fear of Bruce Mattare or Bob Norris. None. I've shooken Bob's hand. I know what a terrified individual that he is, and he is a soup sandwich. However, I will not participate on the same date and time where they improperly set up a gotcha moment that somehow now magically, after weeks of changing of having advertisement, they're going to now change it and say, well, okay, just kidding. Now it's going to be a town hall. It's already been set in people's mind what the event is. You can't unring that bell.
Well, then who looks bad if everybody shows up for that and it's not? Then who would look bad?
It will be Bob.
Then let it be Bob.
Well, we're perfectly fine with that. But like I said, my biggest issue is I would like, because you know that he told you something that was untrue, I would love for you to do what I believe is the biblical and right thing, which is to disclose to people that you were misled. Because right now, my people are saying it looks like that you are participating in this with them, this great setup, and that they know that he did not tell the truth, but he's being rewarded because people are afraid of him and Bruce.
Well, he does. He's being rewarded with the building, is what you're saying?
By being allowed to continue it without being called on the carpet and saying, yes, we're going to allow him to use this. But the reality of it is that before we agreed to it, he misled us on what the intent of the event was.
Dan, the reason I feel that a lot of it is childish is because most people that are going to use this building for free get up, and what do? Instead of running on their own integrity, then what do? They slam the other person. They slam the other person when they come in. At town halls, what do? They slam the other person. It's the most aggravating thing that I can tell you about. And I tell everybody, don't slam the other person. Knock it off. Run on your own integrity. Everybody knows who the other person is.
Sounds like the other pastor that we were talking about in the previous episodes 1 through 8.
Yeah, strikingly similar.
Mm-hmm. So I threw out the example of saying I didn't do anything. I never accused them of committing crimes, just immoral, unethical things. They're the ones that have now told everybody in the community, Dan Wilson has accused us. Your integrous leaders in our tight relationship, you've accused us of committing felonies. And so I said to him, I'm not going to show up because I never did that. It's the same thing as this affair. And you have to defend yourself against a lie that was a lie from the beginning. And either way, you're going to defend yourself. No, I'm just not going to show up. Notice how he never, ever addresses that topic.
No, that it would be too difficult a conversation to have, and it would be too contradictory to the relationships and alliances that he has with Bob Norris and Bruce Mattare. Yeah. I mean, he's trying to act impartial and redirect you and coerce you to showing up. Mm-hmm. It's obvious he has zero intent.
Who's going to look bad if you don't show up? I said, well, Bob's going to. Well, then let it be Bob. Okay, mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we're on the same page. I'm not showing up to this. I will do it at another time and place, as I kept saying over and over, but I'm not doing this event. And he cannot seem to rally around the idea of just saying, Bob, yeah, we're not going to do this event. You can have this place for another debate, but it's going to be a mutually decided venue, moderator, questions, all that. He's not. He's attempting. He wants me at this event.
Yeah. And the reality of it is Bob Norris was never going to debate Dan Wilson. And it was critical that these guys at the beginning of the Norris campaign attempted to orchestrate this event that they knew full well. These guys aren't idiots. Well, one of them maybe is or isn't anyway. They're not idiots. So they knew that we can't, okay, we're understanding that the intellect and, the quick thinker and a guy who's quite resourceful, has a knowledge of history, the U.S. Constitution, that there's no way we're going to put Norris on the stage with Wilson. We're not doing it. So it was critical to them that they caught it early enough on that your traction and following would be as small as it was at the beginning of your campaign. And like you said, create some kind of an event with a bunch of lights and bells and whistles to pretend, and then use that later to pretend that was still some kind of a debate. And people were still repeating that.
And I didn't show up at that event, but that event was exactly a slaughter fest. It was all full of his supporters. He had merchandise everywhere. He kept mixing between a campaign versus his official capacity. So up on the stage, they had name tags: Sheriff Bob Norris, County Commissioner Bruce Mattare, Deputy Prosecutor Bryant Bushling, candidate Dan Wilson. It was so lopsided. They already had their PowerPoints ready to go. They had their questioning. It was an ambush setup, and I wasn't going to go to it, and I didn't go to it.
Not only that, it just was freaking embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean,
they brought my ex-wife
whatever they did not do well. It was like, if this thing got national attention, it would be so made fun of, obliterated. It was embarrassing that the way they're handing off, raising their right hand to swearing to tell the truth. And you're like, what even is this? And handing off documents to former prosecuting attorney who's, you're asking him a leading question, and then he's going to give you the answer that he wants. And we somehow just demonstrated a court of law.
We have golden sound bites from it, which we'll talk about another time. Let's go ahead and keep playing.
All right.
The person has run for and been in operation in our county and our city for a long time. So just run on your own. And we allowed you to come in. We allowed you to say what you said with absolutely no questions of what you said about the other person. So now he wants to come in, and he said all he wants to do, and he said a town hall, but it was basically to do the same. He's going to run, but he's going to slam you unless you show up, and unless you come up with some type of moderation or town hall, call it whatever you want, to prove that the things that you have said about him, and even the things that you have not said, are true or false. So that's where it is right now, Dan. This is between you guys. And if I'm either going to shut our building down from ever being used again, because everybody calls it a town hall, everybody comes in. I can prove that you slammed him while you were here twice at least.
What did I say?
Not that it was untrue.
What did I say that I slammed him, just for the record?
Well, again.
Because I watched the video recently, so I mean, I'm willing to hear what your opinion is on slam.
All right, hang on.
And there's a difference between slamming versus setting somebody up.
Okay. That night that you were here, you have that, right?
I do.
Okay. If you turn it to 1 minute and 46 seconds, and then turn it to 1 minute and 58 seconds, trust me, when you did that, I was in the middle. So this has nothing to do with this. All he wanted to do was blah, 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 blah. You have a right. You have a right to come in and say something about the other party. So I personally didn't care. But if you do come in and you do make certain allegations or anything, then all of a sudden, guess what he's going to do?
So are you saying that it's a minute?
He's a scared child.
So you're saying it's a minute 46 or an hour and 46?
An hour and what did I say?
You said
an hour
minute.
and 46.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. I will.
An hour and 46 and an hour.
Okay, so I want to say a couple things, and we're going to actually play those clips because you hear him saying, "Well, the minute I slammed him, then he had to let him come in and say his piece," and he doesn't like slamming.
The argument's changing. Right. I mean, first it was he was just going to host a town hall, and then he met with them and he understood that there is more to this event. So supposedly he was acting as the great negotiator between Bob and Bruce and shifting it to more of a legitimate debate rather than an event that they were trying to hold, at which point this pastor is now trying to coerce you into doing that when really the pastor was the one who was coerced in the conversation because of the influence of Bruce Mattare, who follows Bob Norris around everywhere. And now he's kind of switching the argument again to saying, well, it's fair for me to allow Bob Norris to come in and rebut because you were here at the altar and stood on this stage and made these, what you slammed Bob. Him. So of course, Bob's going to want his time on this stage in this building to slam you.
So I want to hear the slams. And again, this is for the viewer. We're going to play the first clip. It's about 40 seconds. Then we'll play the second clip. So these are the clips that the pastor is referring to. If you want to find this yourself, you can go to YouTube under the BC Preacher and look at Dan Wilson's border town hall back, I believe it was January 31 of 2024. So without further ado.
Okay, I'm just opening this up and I'm going to hit play.
I may not even win. I plan on winning, but guess what? Duty is mine, results are God's. And if I can do the best I can with the time I'm given to try to inspire everybody to remember what our roots are, that exactly what you said, representative of the people. This is why we have the problems. You have career law enforcement dudes like Bob Norris, and I'm going to say his name, 35 years in law enforcement, retires at $180,000 a year, disability, comes up here, becomes sheriff, brings all of his friends that he worked with down there to be our betters and to bring that kind of corrupt law enforcement environment back up to here. And if you don't think it's happening, it is, right?
Okay, so that was the first slam. That Bob Norris has been a career cop. He's bringing all of that corruption from California up here with his friends, which he has done. I mean, he was there during the most corrupt time of Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department with the deputy gangs and all the other impropriety that was going on from 2007 until 2013 when he bailed just about the time that the Department of Justice came in and started cleaning house.
He was like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
Funny how as a lieutenant, he exited at the time that the feds were coming in to investigate. It's
almost like he had intel.
Anyway, so there was the first slam.
And you stated what the amount of his disability was, which is public record.
Yeah.
All right,
so
here's the second clip of you slamming Norris on stage at the altar church during your event.
And people that have been career law enforcement don't understand because people say, well, you don't know how to run a $36, $40 million budget. Number one, Bob Norris does not sit down on his laptop and go, well, what am I going to put towards donuts this month and firearms for the next, that's absurd. Everybody in their department submits their budget line items to the sheriff, and the sheriff then presents it to the county commissioners. Well, I'm going to tell you that somebody that has never spent their own fortune that they work for does not have the same appreciation that a businessman does that has for 24 years dealt with my own funds and risked my own funds.
Okay. So that was my second slam. I said, I was defending the fact that, just because I wasn't a command staff level police officer doesn't mean that I didn't know how to run budgets. So that was my slam.
Yeah, and I don't understand what fairy tale land people live in that you think in this modern day of politics that I'm just going to merely run on my own ideas and say I'm a businessman and I've done budgets and I've done all of these things and disallow you to compare and contrast that with your opponent. Well, then, you know what? Some people need to grow some things that they need to grow so they can stand up to and answer those questions. Your elected officials should be able to answer to those questions instead of just saying, how dare somebody say these things that then is etching away at your ability to trust us. You should just trust us.
Right.
It's like, look at what the problem actually is because they're not answering to you.
Yeah. So there are the two slams as to
How
why
heinous.
he was compelled. You know, once you slammed him, and by the way, you slammed him, but you know, you have a right to talk about the other opponent. So he's kind of wishy-washy.
Oh, I think, yeah, he starts to say, once I heard that, I knew.
Oh,
but
man.
but I think he says something here in a few that's like really gold because, like you said, the wishy-washy is, he's all over the place.
He is.
Ready?
Yep.
Hour and 48.
I'm going to go pull those up and then I'm going to listen to them because, and so just to be clear, I'm not in front of this. What is, in your opinion, what is a slam? What defines a slam?
Well, when you're running not just on your own integrity, but you start saying negative things about the other party that you say are not true about them. Because then what it does is it just gets them worked up. And now, and let me tell you something, I don't say much about any party, but I'm going to tell you this, and this between you and I, but this sheriff is the biggest baby, and I get tired of it, no matter what. It's always, he promises this, doesn't do that, but you know what? That's his own integrity. And so when it comes time, then a lot of people know who he is. So let the vote be the vote. But people get up in here on these town halls, and that's what they're going to say. They always do that. They slam the other party to try to get themselves a little bit more integrity on their part. And in a minute and 46, or an hour and 46, an hour and 58, you could tell where you said something about him, and I did listen to it. It got him worked up, and so now here he comes.
Yeah.
So
does it bother you?
This thing should have been, it should have a moderator, and the both of you should just openly, communicatively agree to a moderator and somebody moderating this thing to where both of you can ask the questions. And if he says, well, he said that it was a felony, then the moderator can look at you and say, well, Mr. Dan Wilson, so is that true? Did you at any time ever come out and actually say that he has committed a felony or a crime? Boom, done. So now who looks like a liar? But neither one of you want to get involved in that because it's the other person's agenda. And it's like, I'm already going out of my way by letting you use it and him use it. So I've done my part in trying to at least be here for the community. Okay. So it's either I'm going to shut down all.
Okay. This is the point of the conversation where, and hold on, I actually start to sympathize with Pastor Tim a little bit. If I, just to put it out there, where I'm like, okay, let's just say maybe there's the part of him that legitimately knows that Bob Norris is a messed up dude, and he wants you to show up and just prove that Norris is the one that looks like a liar. Norris is the one that looks bad. Norris looks like a fool. I mean, maybe he's realized he won't put himself in a position to do that, and maybe he wants you to do it. I mean, maybe that's legit. I don't know. But so I know there was all this coercion all the way through this, which he's still continuing here. He made himself the victim again in those statements.
Well, notice that, I'm just going to shut everything down, but he said, look, I said something that upset Bob, and everybody knows that, or he says, his words, Bob's a big baby. And he's tired of, the promises that he makes, and he basically never does anything that he promises.
Yeah, he's revealing a lot.
But he still is trying to coerce me into this event, which I continually say, we're not doing this event. We'll do another event, but not this one.
And whether or not the intention is to protect those elected officials, that is what this pastor's doing. Another pastor in previous episodes has done. Whether or not that's the intent, it is what they are doing. They are continuing to protect these guys when they're actually in a position to do something about it. And I think that's what you keep trying to redirect him to. You are in a position to do something about this and do the right thing.
Stand up and lead. Don't sit here and go on a long rant as to what a victim you are. And, you have a right to defend yourself, but yet you kind of don't when you make somebody upset. I mean, it's all over the place.
And again, as if this isn't politics, and you've got to be able to talk about your opposition's shortcomings. I mean, you just do. That's the lay of the land, you guys.
We're about at the point in the conversation where we've gone in circles, and I'm getting pretty close to trying to wrap this up. So
yes, actually, that was a perfect thing to say, because we've got to put you in the mindset that this is exhausting for you.
Yeah, we're going in circles.
Yes. So yeah, and we'll see that this is where we're leading toward, that you are actually trying to just draw this to a close because you realize this is going in circles.
All of this stuff, and not let the community ever use this building again because of all of this. Or I'm going to have two people come together and go to fisticuffs, or I'm going to get a moderator up there, and it's going to be on my terms. And then I'm going to say, okay, for one time, it's going to be on my terms. And then you guys are going to come in, you're going to have a moderator up there, and everybody else in the building is going to be quiet while the moderator asks the questions between the two of you, and both of you are going to submit to that moderator the different problems that you have and have the moderator ask the questions. And that's what I told him.
Yeah.
If he wants to back it up on his side, then do it.
Yeah.
Show him.
Yeah.
And if not, then it'll show him. But if you try coming after the church, or you try and do it's not gonna help. I guarantee you, it won't help you at all. And if he tries to come after the church for this, it's not gonna help him. So
but you know what? I here's the part I disagree. I think that what right now we have is everybody knows what Bob and Bruce are up to, and it's not good. We know that it's not good. We know that there is corruption all over. In fact, I have a lot of things.
Show everyone, Dan. Show everyone. Yeah. This is the best chance in the world for you to show everyone how corrupt it is. I'm telling you, if I had your opportunity, I would jump on it.
But the problem is
and this is how it's going to be done, I would jump on it.
And we will. But here's where I'm amazed at. You cannot be the only person, the only pastor, the only man of integrity in this county that understands what Bob and Bruce are up to. You can't be. And I'm shocked that I'm the only one out there right now that's willing to actually stand in that gap to call it like we see it, rather than everybody on the KCRCC wants to attack me, or the majority of them. People do not want to actually raise up to the occasion to actually call out what they're doing, the bullying techniques, the dishonesty. Why am I the only man in this entire county that's doing this?
Oh, trust me. You're not the only man that does that, Dan.
Who's done it publicly?
So, who's doing it publicly?
Yeah, who's doing it publicly?
Dan, on this particular circumstance between the two of you?
No, just in general. Just in general. Who's doing it?
Brother, I have stood in that gap for years.
To call Bruce and Bob out?
No, that's what I said. Between this circumstance, I've got on Bruce before.
Publicly?
Trust me, I'll tell you what. When it comes to social media, Bruce is a wizard. He'll destroy whoever he can. The problem that you have is Bruce. That's the problem.
I'm well aware of that. And then that's a very sad reflection that we have a man in the position that's supposed to stand in the gap for the people, that has to be backed up and coached by a county commissioner. I mean, this is where we're at. No other.
Then that needs to be proven. It needs to be proven, Dan. So, I mean, like I said, if I would do my best to not waste my time and to put a moderated first-time event between a sheriff and an incumbent that wants to come up and try to take that position, with everything that's being said right now, to put both of you in front of a moderator, ask the questions where the rules are that nobody can interrupt those questions, and it has to be answered by those answered and proven by whoever is in the position.
So here's the question.
That is the time.
But we're going right back into this thing that he has created, right? We want to debate. We want an actual debate That's what we want. Is we want an actual debate, not a take your eyes off the ball of the things that we can debate about. But he doesn't like the fact that I've hurt his feelings by actually showing people things about him that are unethical, not criminal, but unethical. And he has now framed this whole argument that there is so-called criminal allegations. They don't exist. So it's not a debate. It's not a debate.
Just prove it then. Come and prove that that's what he did. That's all.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do it on that date and time. To me, it is tainted. Everybody in the community is expecting that program to unfold. They did it without
Not if we change it.
They did it with everything without one iota of consulting and asking us. They set the whole thing up. You cannot unring that bell, and I will not be coerced into that. So anyway, I know that we beat up.
So we're just about ready to try to wrap this up, this conversation at the time. But he said a couple interesting things. Bruce Mattare, he admits, is a problem.
Yep.
He says that Bruce is a social media wizard and will destroy anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So you have somebody that I believe Tim sits on the KCRCC vetting committee. He's part of the KCRCC as far as I know. I know that he donates money to them. We've got that on Secretary of State
Public
records. But it's fascinating to me. I was accused. Part of the reason why we're now playing this is I was accused by Padula and others of yelling and screaming and trying to force Tim not to have this event. Have you heard any yelling or screaming yet?
Yeah. And not only,
no.
And not only were you accused, they went and spread that message so that the message of what these things that you supposedly did went all out into the community. And we all know how that spreads like wildfire.
Right. So we're going to continue playing this here in a second. Again, trying to wrap this up, but we're going in circles. Here's your opportunity. You can do it. No, not going to do it this time and place, but you can do it over and over. It's at least the fourth or fifth time now that he's attempted to say.
Kind of seems like he was sent on a mission, doesn't it?
And then lastly, I want to remind people, if you're sensitive, coming up in this next clip, you're going to hear me, Dan Wilson, use the F word. This is allegedly what set this all in motion, why Pastor John Padula was telling his campaign team and 15 to 20 of his friends that I had cussed out Pastor Tim. So let's go ahead and listen to me attempting to wrap this up.
Okay.
Up a dead horse. I appreciate you actually having the courage to call me back and to have the discussion. I understand where you are, but understand going forward, I will be the man to stand in the gap because I know what's going on. I know what Bruce is up to. I know what Bob's up to. And the people of Kootenai County need to be protected from both of them. And I will be that man, and I will not be silenced by anybody because I am righteous before God. I don't have anything that anybody can hold over top of me. I've never been bought. I've never been sold. That's who I am, and I'm not going to change, and I won't be bullied by these guys.
But Dan, and I would hope you would not, but I don't know where you're going to get the agenda where it's not he said, she said, versus just having you come in and being able to set it up with him right now and right here, and to be able to accomplish that, because if you do it on the side,
it's not going to happen. If he wants to do it after that date that he arbitrarily set up and already has everybody in the community thinking it's going to be another event, then he's not going to win on that one. And we'll be producing our video to address that, and we'll also be giving everybody online the download so that they can look at all the documents that we're in possession of and the witnesses. However, what I will also say is that if he fails after that point to do an actual real public town hall debate, I can't change any of that. But my hope is that after this little fiasco date of the 14th comes and goes, that he's willing to actually sit down and do a real debate, not just some concocted show that he's decided to polarize everybody by saying, I don't like what Dan Wilson has raised about me, and look at the big bad man. He's accused me of all these crimes, and now I've never accused him, so I'm not even going to answer the charges that I've supposedly accused him of because it's not there. But anyway, thanks for your...
You don't have to. You just come and you prove that you never accused him.
Yeah. Well,
and that way it's over.
No.
Game's over. Everybody knows tonight.
I'm going to absolutely disagree with you. It is incumbent upon you and everybody else to say, show us the area where Dan Wilson has accused us of criminal activities, and you will not find it. That is what's really fucking pissing me off. Is that none of you guys have bothered. Not one of you guys has at any time said produce the allegations of criminal activity.
Yes, you're wrong. Again.
Where are they then?
Calling all of us
Where are they?
Dan, I went to him. I asked him. He sent me an actual thing that you had actually said. I'll send it to you. It's not very accused.
So there it is. Now, cussing out versus dropping a profanity. Again, am I sorry that I dropped the profanity in retrospect? Absolutely. There is no excuse for me using foul language. But there's a vast difference between saying, listen here, you blankety blank, no good blankety blank, versus dropping it into a conversation. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, do you think at any point, sometimes there are words in the English language that you do use, you insert expletives because it stands to change the direction, that change the course of the conversation. Yeah. And you just spent nearly 40 minutes, over 30 minutes talking in circles. Mm-hmm. And realizing what part of this conversation was productive?
I am going to take responsibility. I'm not going to, say I was frustrated or any of those things to justify it. I was not justified to use that word to the pastor.
Well, do you think you could have gotten your point across without using it?
You know what? Probably. I mean, that's something I had to dig deeper to do. So again, I was wrong. Anybody that listens to this, I was wrong to have used that. But here's where I take the exception. John Padula stated that why doesn't he play the whole tape on his podcast where he yells the F word and bullshit at the pastor? And why doesn't he only play part of it to twist what the pastor says? And he was going around and telling people, as I received my very first phone call, mere hours after this conversation took place, where people were already saying, why did you yell and scream?
Hours after a supposed private conversation took place.
Yeah. I'm getting people calling me.
It's like, real private.
They're a part of the campaign team and other associates. They're saying, hey, why did you cuss out Pastor Tim? So John's saying, well, I use the F word, but the intent by everybody that heard it knows that he was telling people that I cussed him out.
Yes.
Trying to frame it that I was unhinged, yelling, screaming, attempting to bully Tim into not having this event. I was arguing with him back and forth. My point as to why, look, you shouldn't have this event without a disclaimer rather, about Bob and his untruthfulness and the fact why I wasn't going to attend it. We went through that 4 or 5 times at least.
Yeah, it's not a hard concept to get across, and that's why the talking in circles makes no sense. I mean, it's a very simple concept that this event was painted to be something entirely different.
It was 100%
you don't undo that and say, never mind, this is a legitimate debate. And I'm pretty sure you and I both know, no matter what slight changes they may have made, if you agreed to it, it was not going to be a legitimate debate.
A debate usually comes in the form of questions from the audience.
Yeah.
From some other predetermined.
Yep.
And he keeps saying, well, you guys can have this debate where you can bring your proof and he can bring it.
It's
the same thing.
What?
It's the same thing. It's not a debate. You're mixing both of them up. So I attempted to get off. I dropped that. But I do want to point out that I was not yelling and screaming at him. Did I raise my voice there for a second? Yeah. But I would argue and say that he's a very loud individual as well. I mean, there was times where he was like, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Now we haven't heard the end of it, so maybe you continue on your string of expletives or your rant.
Let's
so
listen.
we've got to see this through to make sure that is or isn't the case.
Accusatory at all, but I'll send it to you.
It's not accusatory. Then did I accuse him of a crime or did I not?
You said nobody had the guts enough to go to him and say it. I said, yes, I did.
Okay,
And I have guts enough to go to both of you and say that a lot of this is childish, Dan. You get up. If you really got what you say you got, then you get up and you actually prove you were a man of law for a long time. He can't say these things about you without any proof either. So you get up with somebody that knows what they're doing.
Who made the allegation?
And somebody that can hold the both of you accountable.
Who made the allegation that I said he committed a crime? This whole thing is predicated. The whole thing is predicated.
Well, actually, Bruce did.
It's predicated that I have committed them. And I can read you the email that they've sent out, because they sent us an email in conjunction with that advertisement. They have said that I have accused them of criminal activity. So my question is, again, if I've claimed they've committed a crime, then they should be able to say, here are the videos, or here is the public statement that he said that Bob Norris is committing a crime or Bruce Mattare is committing a crime. You're not going to find it. And that's what's pissing me off is nobody's said, okay, Bob, you say that Wilson has accused you of committing a crime, so produce it.
You're wrong. I just got you telling you. I did.
Where is it then?
All right. You ready for this?
Yep.
Separation of powers is supposed to be a fundamental part of our government.
Yep.
So why is a county commissioner makes laws and controls controls a person, small writing, excuse me, and the sheriff, which is the executive, colliding together? Why should a current commissioner possess, police powers, there it is, police powers and have access to information that are reserved for folks who have actually passed a background investigation, polygraph, and a psych test? And so now, do you know what I'm referring to now?
I do. And so you know where the source of that is, right? I'm quoting verbatim from him from his November 19th, 2023 Coeur d'Alene Press article, where Bob and Bruce both admit to this. Have you gone to that article?
No, I haven't gone to any article.
I
asked him for the proof, and he sent me the proof.
There is no proof. That's not a criminal allegation. I asked why he has it. He's the one that specifically in that November 19th Coeur d'Alene the Coeur d'Alene Press article, stated that he shares privileged information with Bruce Mattare that he does not share with Duncan or Brooks. And then Bruce goes on and talks about the importance of it and why he has privilege to that, but he won't tell what he's talking about because he's under an NDA. That's not my words, that's his. Where have I said that he committed a crime?
He's in here. You asked me. You said nobody had the guts to go to him. You're wrong. Okay? When he got this building, I called him on it. When it wasn't what he said it was going to be. I went to him. I asked him for the proof. And and here it is. And you've read that before. So in that statement that he gave me right there, then it is accusatory. So the accusatory part of that is saying that they are in cahoots, him as a county commissioner and a sheriff. So that is what he is going after. So that's all. And if you're quoting from a paper, all you got to do is show up and say, all I did is quote exactly what he put in the paper.
Well, I already have. I've already done that.
Of your garbage.
I've already done that. That's exactly. I put it in all of my posts, my social media. I reference these things.
Okay. Then if that's all it is, then both of you should get together and the both of you should actually sit down. But either way, if you blast him, then you're going to have a bunch of people blasting you. And if he blasts you, then they're going to blast him. And here we go again. So versus two grown men sitting down and saying, okay, this is what you said, and we just want to know the truth. Having a decent conversation with somebody there asking the question. If it's not on your agenda, you're not going to do it. If it's not on his agenda, he's not going to do it. And so now all of a sudden, who's going to be attacked? The guy in the middle? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you have the opportunity to let the people know that, yes, you are holding allowing them to hold the town hall, but you were misled as to what the original intent was. That's as simple as it gets. There's nothing more that's required.
Well, for me, I have no problem standing up and saying he asked for a town hall. And in the town hall itself, it wasn't what was going down. So I have no problem saying that,
That's
except, like I said, I went to him and I did what I was supposed to do. I went to him and told him, and he said that that's what he wanted. And then I called you back and said that's what he wanted. And so he took his agenda, changed it around, said, I will do what I said I was going to do. And then what do you want me to say?
No, I think you're covering it. I mean, you know, I believe you. You said you went to him, and he admitted that was not what the original intent was. And all you have to do is publicly allow people to know that you are letting him actually use that venue, but he was untruthful for what the original intent was. It was a town hall, not some kind of kabuki, you know, courtroom theater thing.
Well, I have no problem making the statement.
That's awesome.
Not as a person that's I'm not renting anything. I'm giving him this building for that, like we gave it to you.
Yeah, I think that's great.
We're the ones that are paying for this stuff.
Now, let's go ahead and put
we
it
pay for
We're inching toward the end. We're getting there.
End.
We are getting there.
You obviously have a bunch. I saw you scribbling notes.
Oh, I don't know that I scribbled notes. Well, he does finally admit when he reads through what this supposed you accuse them of criminal accusation. He then realizes he has to backpedal, and it's like he's trying to wrap his mind around it to say,
says, well, it's not really accusatory.
Yeah, well, no, he said it. Well, that was accusatory. So, I mean, the note that I made is, well, an accusatory tone or making an accusation, generally speaking, that is not accusing somebody of criminal activity. It is not one in the same. Again, you have to be able, part of your platform when you are running for office is you have to be able to talk about deficiencies of your opponent. Not only that, if some of the things are unethical and questionable and should be of concern to the public, then it is going to be your duty running for office against this guy. It is going to be your duty to expose that.
Well, look at how many times Bruce Mattare and Bob, while they were in their official capacities running their town halls, would make reference to me, calling me a liar and a promoter of disinformation. So it's ridiculous to try to think that we're going to have the same stage every single time. Well, I'm going to say this about you. Now you get a rebuttal. I mean, I took my own fair share of them saying things about me where I couldn't publicly go back and give a rebuttal. This, though, gave them the opportunity. And Bob, with his $100,000 war chest, couldn't apparently afford a social media, director to come in and be able to produce videos to respond. I think that's part of what pissed them off so much, is that they couldn't respond back and forth. But notice that Tim, once again, when I said, where is the criminal allegation, he changes the subject yet again. Yeah. And he continually changes the subject over and over and over again.
Well, his go-to statement was, well, I am just in the middle. You guys need to just sit down and have a civil conversation, man to man. This really has nothing to do with me. I'm just stuck in the middle. Mm-hmm. And he continued to redirect. Mm-hmm. And so I think at the times where he didn't really know where to go with it and he wasn't going to concede, that became the default response.
You could tell that he said, well, he didn't read anything, right? He's kind of like the other pastor. I just don't have time. I'm going to get involved in this stuff, but I don't have time to actually figure out what each side's saying. And so when I dropped that nugget and said, I'm quoting from the Coeur d'Alene Press. So if Bob Norris is claiming that I'm making false statements, then why isn't he demanding a retraction from the Coeur d'Alene Press, which he never did? This was some 4 or 5 months after he had made that statement, he and Bruce, in the Coeur d'Alene Press. And so I told Tim, I said, look, this that you're referencing from, I believe he grabbed that from probably my Instagram, and he was reading my...
the caption of an Instagram video.
And, once again... But he's saying it, and when he gets challenged on it, he has to kind of start backing up. Oh, well, yeah, I guess you're right.
Well, because this is, again, I'm sympathizing with the pastor here. I'm going to do it because this is the problem, and it is a problem that we have on our hands, that the elected officials, what they did is let's say the pastor is trusting of them, and they are telling him, Dan Wilson has accused us of this criminal, he's made criminal allegations, and he needs to get up here and prove it. This is causing great dissonance in the community. How dare he? And they Norris and Mattare
the
provide
social media wizard.
But he's the wizard. They provide the pastor with, and here's Dan Wilson did this, and here's the evidence. So the problem, again, just plain devil's advocate, is the problem you have in your hands is the pastor is trusting that is good evidence.
After
he's trusting that it's good evidence.
After he's already said numerous times in this conversation that Bob can't be trusted. That Bruce is problematic. He's admitting it, and then so I don't.
You can't
I don't
have
share
it
that.
all.
I don't share your empathy for him.
Okay,
no, I don't have that same empathy or sympathy.
Well, that's
for him.
Why it's good to talk it through, because you can start breaking down the argument. And I get why people pick a side and they just go there and they go with it, because it's like, well, I trust my elected officials, or I trust my pastor, and so you, even all your natural curiosity, which we've talked about before, you just shut down because the overwhelming, overarching point is that you trust them. And this is why Bob Norris and Bruce Mattare were scared big babies, as the pastor put it, just a big baby. What they were ultimately scared of is not even necessarily that a candidate like Dan Wilson would come in and win. He'd sweep across and win. But what they were scared of was that he was out here exposing them, and their only counter argument is just they panic. We don't actually have to prove anything. Let me just flip this and say, how dare anybody question our integrity or take away from the trust of the sheriff's office. And again, I'm reminding you, they never had a counter argument. They never disproved anything that Dan Wilson was saying to this day.
In fact, we know that Bob lied. Bob and Bruce both lied. They claimed in that show your proof challenge that they eventually had a few weeks later that, you know what, this whole special deputy, there's nothing wrong with it. And all of his special deputies, who are typically those that have never had any law enforcement experience, they all sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. And apparently Bruce, claimed that he signed one as well. I did records requests. There are no NDAs for any special deputy in Kootenai County. If there is, they refuse to give them to me. They said no record. They said no records exist. But the bottom line is that, and I still stand by it. Just because Idaho does not have restrictions against it, anytime there's a budget hearing for the sheriff, and if you want to go back and watch any of the budgets back all of 2024, look at how many times Bruce Mattare is advocating for the sheriff.
Yep.
His job is to keep the sheriff in check when it comes to financial and policies. And these guys were letting Bob Norris do whatever he wanted, from not only the helicopter, which has been grounded now for 3 months as of the time that we recorded this in December 2024. But otherwise, there's so many things that these guys were getting away with. And I came in and started poking the bear and saying, you guys are idiots. Yep. You can't even run an office efficiently. But I'm getting sidetracked on this. Once again, we'll finish this up and we'll have a closing comment. I think it only goes on for a few more minutes. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I mean, I think, that may have been a bit of a sidetrack, but it is there to emphasize the inappropriateness and the ethical issue with having a county commissioner and your elected sheriff working hand in hand, the meeting with your local pastors who are highly influential and who do have political influence and have direct contact, all of these people with each other, and they have a common goal. There is a reason that they have aligned the way that they have, and they know that they can use it to manipulate you. And there's a reason that Dan Wilson has come forward and saying, even though Idaho doesn't have laws against doing this, meaning a county commissioner can be working arm in arm with the sheriff, and you're crossing
as a special deputy.
That as well. And then realizing in budget meetings and things, I mean, there is a clear alliance. Like it is, if you sit in the room, it's visible. It's visible in they message each other, the eye contact they have, the words they're mouthing, like, I'm sorry, when something didn't, like you can see it.
Right.
So they have become so brazen, they're not even trying to hide it from you anymore because there is an agenda that they're pushing. So a little bit of a deviation from finishing this up, but it has been fundamental to this conversation because those two, Norris and Mattare, it's a package deal, guys.
Yeah, it really is.
So there's just 4 minutes left in the audio, so we'll finish it out and then we'll have our final remarks.
The cleanup people, we pay sometimes. We put coffee out for everybody. We're the ones that are paying for this. And in doing it, I do it so people can get to know these people that are out there.
Yeah.
Now, I gave a chance for everybody to get to know you. And I have given a chance to Norris before for everybody to get to know him.
Yep.
And if he is wanting a town hall to be able to do this, and then he did kind of, it was a, can I put that it was a lie? I'd have to think about that. He did mislead me, that's for sure.
That's a lie. That's a
I
lie.
went to him
Same thing.
and I said that this is what you said it was going to be. And he says, okay, then we'll make it that. Now I have to put the same statement. He said that he would make it that town hall meeting. So I called Dan and said, Dan, all right, so it's going to be. I went to him. He made it right. All right. Well, that doesn't hurt him. What hurts him is for you to get up and you to actually say, listen, this is what you said. This is what you did. Because I don't have time to do all these investigations on people. I can tell you in the past what he said that he would do with us pastors and never did that. But bottom line is, like I said, when it comes to voting time, then that shows up. But the bottom line to this whole thing, Dan, is it hurts both of you. Because when he said, I'm sorry if that's what, you, and he did say it like that, I'm sorry if you thought it was going to be something like that, but
projecting.
We'll go ahead and make it that way. But I did call you, and I told you, this is what he said, and so we're going to turn it back into a town hall, except if you want, we can even do it, because I understand that John has even told me when you've tried to do anything, then you get the Terry Seymours or whatever to stand up, and all they do is interrupt you. So I can stop that. I can absolutely stop that and give you your time.
One of my favorite verses is, and this is why I'm not worried about things hurting me. There's a Bible verse that says, he who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who makes his paths crooked will be found out. And I hear what you're saying. I truly believe you. I'm not questioning your integrity. I will tell you that Bob, though, has continued. If he truly was being up and up with you by saying it would be a town hall, he has not taken down that paid advertisement. So as of right now, this date and time, 3/7/24 at 09:30, he is still advertising.
It's because you told me that you were not going to do it. You weren't going to meet with him.
Well,
so
he never sent another email stating, okay, we will change this from this format to a debate. So he should have actually, not the pastor, you were the middleman. He should have actually, he's the one that threw this absurd challenge out. If he truly was going to change it per what your suggestion was, then he should have reached out to us and said, okay, we'll do this now and we'll take down all of our paid advertising, but he didn't do it. So anyway, hey, I appreciate your time. I hope after this at some point you'll be able to observe more of me and my character. I will continue to pray that truth will be first and foremost on everything. Duty is mine, and the results are God's. And so, that's what I'm going to rest assured on. And I just appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Well, you bet. Please send me that information that you have. So I do have that, though, in case I need it.
Yeah, we'll send it right away. Thank you, sir.
All right.
God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I did, in fact, send that over to him.
Mm-hmm.
The supposed, actually, it was the advertisement. So you hear him. He now contradicts what he said earlier in the conversation, where he says, well, Bob's going to do this anyway because he already knows that you weren't going to participate in it. So he was saying before, when I said, look, we never were contacted by him. He just arbitrarily said, you're going to come and be a part of this. it seems to then change towards the end where he's like, well, yeah, Bob, can I say that he was untruthful to me? Well, he misled me. Well, that is a lie, right? Mm-hmm. And so he kind of comes back full circle.
Now, can I say he's a liar? Well, he misled me, that's for sure.
And he's trying one more time. Well, you could have this event, and I'll make certain that the Terrys, the KCRCC won't get to interrupt you because, John tells us that they interrupt you. And so again, there's this confirmation that I was receiving a lot of unnecessary static from the KCRCC people. But in conclusion, I believe that what was said was nothing more than an attempt to justify why he wouldn't stand up for him. Mm-hmm. I think that's the conversation that you and I had back in March. I dated that March 7, 2024. John Padula, when I attempted to set the record straight and to get together with him and Tim back in early October, the end of September, they refused. I told them, look, you need to set the record straight. You are allowing lies to be perpetrated against me. It's damaging my reputation. And their response basically was, so what? We don't care, right? And then later on, John said, well, we had the pastor was in Israel and then he got sick. And well, they never disclosed any of that to us. They just said, as Tim said, look, you're childish. I'm not going to have, basically anything to do with you. Mm-hmm. So when John said, hey, well, why isn't Wilson producing the entire script? Well, guess what? We're doing this because John, challenged us to do it. And it is time to set the record straight. I sat on this from March all the way until the end of September, minding my own business. If I was going to use this politically, I would have used it a very, very long time ago, early in the original campaign, but I didn't. And after going to them and requesting and showing them the urgency of, look, my reputation is being damaged, they couldn't be bothered. They blew it off. So that is why after the campaign, we decided to go ahead and release this recording in its entirety.
Yeah. I think we got a big problem on our hands when if you have what typically would be good men, is not a quote unique to me, but when good men do nothing. Yeah. And you could theorize all day long as to what their motivations were, what Pastor Tim's motivations were, John Padula's, that they might have thought, it's kind of some of what Pastor Tim was saying, I don't have time to investigate all of this. But somewhere along the way, they each determined that you, candidate Dan Wilson, were not worth the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even saying that for them to decide you were not worth the time, I'm not even saying that that was nefarious. Mm-hmm. But it is a reflection of the problem that we have on our hands, that it is all of these things working in unison. The relationship that the pastors and the pastoral staff, the church staff, have with these elected officials, and the type of control that's passing back and forth. Mm-hmm. And if you're not a part of that system and you're not a part of that program, you don't have a chance. And these guys knew that, which is why you were not worth their time until you pressed to the point that they had to respond in some way. And then your motivation was, we probably could have been civil and let this go, but they took it a step further to say, well, Wilson's not worth my time. I could buy that theory, right. Except that then what was the point of running their mouths of a private conversation? What was the point?
Yeah. And why, as a pastor, if you're gonna talk spiritual things, you're gonna play that card, because both of these pastors, Tim and John, as well as the other pastor that we were talking about in episodes 1 through 8, they want to play this biblical game,
right? Where
they want to apply the Bible when it's appropriate for them, and then when it's not appropriate or convenient, then they completely disregard it. Now, it could be argued, you guys are the clergy. We're just merely candidates. I have a faith in Jesus Christ. I'm imperfect, but I know what my salvation lies in, and they knew that. So at what point then is it incumbent upon them to say, hey, Wilson, we felt like X, Y, and Z, you did this. So we're going to biblically, before we run our mouths, we're going to come and confront you with this, confront you that you cussed out the pastor and were yelling and screaming at him or whatever was being said at whatever times, but they didn't do that.
Well, and we know it's because their concern wasn't for making it right with you. What in their minds, it's justified. Well, it's justified.
They wanted to damage me.
Let's just let benefit of the doubt. Let's say it wasn't, I want to damage Wilson, but I want to save all of these people from potentially being duped by Wilson or following Wilson. I'm going to expose the kind of person that Wilson truly is.
My theory is that there was a lot of heat being put on Tim and John early on in the campaign to support another solid Christian. And I think that what was going on is that they knew that if they came out and had any kind of positivity towards me whatsoever, publicly, that Bruce Mattare, Bob Norris, and we know this because we heard it over and over at how Bob and Bruce would show up where they'd send their goons to pay people visits to bully them into supporting them over me.
We know they did it.
We got firsthand accounts.
They did it.
And they did it plenty and often. They used retired KCSO detectives to go out and to strong arm Soprano style people.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is I think that this gave them an opportunity to say, well, you know what? Wilson had such egregious behavior that I can't support him. So basically, you don't have to tell the people that are supporting you in your run for office, hey, why aren't you also siding up with Wilson, who is, at that time, I wasn't an independent, I was a Republican. He's a solid dude. And I think what this did, and I could be completely wrong, this is a theory, that what it allowed them to do is to use a crutch to say, Wilson did this, and now I got to make it sound worse than what it was. Mm-hmm. But here's my out to say, Wilson cussed out a pastor, and therefore I cannot support him.
Well, it's kind of like that classic idea of a narcissistic relationship where they will push and push and push. They'll push you, and they'll push you, and then when you finally you have that heightened response, then it's like, look at you. Are you some kind of crazy individual? Or you're using profanity? How dare you?
Well, look, here's another point too. These men are involved with recovery. That's what this church is known for, is recovery of addicts. Pastor John himself, as he has publicly stated before he had his conversion, was a street thug. Lots of convictions, lots of drug activity, other things. I'm pretty certain he's heard the F word before.
Right.
I'm pretty certain that Pastor Tim Remington, who not only as a pastor, but also somebody that works in recovery, but also is involved locally at the KCRCC and was an appointed state legislator for a short time. I know darn good and well these men have heard profanity.
Yeah.
Again, not justifying it, but their false shock.
Right.
Is what's laughable. And so,
well, and you're proving a false shock in that the profanity was used. Again, almost 40 minutes into it, it got to that because in essence, it's like the frustration, and I'm not justifying it. But the conversation continued in a civil fashion for 10 minutes beyond that point.
Yeah. So, John, if you're listening to this, you wanted this thing to be released in its entirety. You didn't want it to be manipulated as you had accused us of doing or twisting it. So, per your request, and I think the people in this town, again, need to understand what their leaders, because look, they're not sheriff, they're not county commissioner, but they're pastors, and they are accountable to the people, especially those that look up to them for spiritual advice and spiritual direction. So if you're going to go around and let's talk about, you gossip. You took a private conversation and you disclosed it to people that had no business hearing that conversation. So one, who else do you do that with? Number two, you then did not tell the truth as to what I actually said. And then three, you allowed that lie to continue to grow in this community, not only in the beginning, but when I requested at the conclusion of the race, towards the very end, for it to be corrected, you refused. You said that I'm a child. So
Well, the statement was also made that if you come out against the church, I mean, basically that was being hung over your head. You had no path, no recourse. He said, if you come out against the church, that is not going to go well for you. So he's in a safe zone, apparently, because that is not going to go well for you.
Notice it, actually, you know this, but the listeners don't necessarily know. To the best of my ability, to the best of my knowledge, Tim Remington never made any kind of public statement that Bob lied to him, misled him. However he wants to spin the fact that Bob was not honest. That did not happen. Again, where is the integrity? In the old days, I recall pastors that couldn't care less about elected officials. Their devotion was to the word of God and to serving God, and had no problem coming into a situation like this and going, you know what, Wilson, here's what's being said, but, you know, here's the solution. Norris, this is the solution. Both of you guys figure your own stuff out, but I'm not going to be the victim by continually saying, well, I'm the guy in the middle and I have no recourse, or.
What I definitely did not hear through the course of that conversation was a pastor who is being a strong leader. There was nothing, a ton of deflecting, a ton of victimhood.
Yep.
And those tactics work. I mean, that's why I broke in the middle of a conversation at points and say, look, I empathize because I understand, even as we have people listening to this podcast, they're going to hear that and it's going to be uncomfortable because you're going to find, depending on how you're hardwired and God's designed you, you're going to find empathy in that. Well, yeah, he was stuck in the middle.
Well, Padula's and I's conversation later on, you know, this is after I'd already released the two snippets on our live broadcast, the one that got everybody so whipped up. When I confronted John and said, hey, why did you not come to me first? He admitted that he should have done that, but yet he was not willing to go back. And he said, I wouldn't vote for you for $1 million.
Yep.
You have no integrity. So anyway, this is continuation of my experience in Kootenai County politics with major churches in the area that are very politically active. I know the altar has town halls of all sorts there. They've had debates. It's a nice place. The people there are great. I have many friends that go there. I'm not bagging on the church. In fact, I would sit down and reconcile with both Tim and John. There's nothing that says, in my book that this is it. I would like for there to be restoration, but there has to be some steps forward to correct the record for what was done. But no, I think that a lot of people at the altar are good people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the nature of man that these things degrade. I think it's the altar is an incredible resource. I believe that it has been used for much good. Now that you and I are on the other end of having run a year-long campaign, we understand how every penny counts. So when you have a facility in the community that has offered their space, and it's a beautiful, welcoming, clean, with all the things that matter. People can hear, they're comfortable when they're sitting, they can see. You realize what an incredible, as a candidate, what an incredible resource that actually is, because it can be slim pickings. Yep. And when you try to rent other facilities, it's incredibly expensive.
Well, and we did pay their sound guy because it was an in-kind donation, the building, and we paid the guy that came and sang. I don't believe that Bob Norris, who held his Show Your Proof along with Bruce Mattare event, I don't remember ever seeing any disclosure that they reported any in-kind contribution for the use of that church.
Yeah, and I don't think they have any trouble getting use of facilities, whether it be malls or other places where they can hold events. And I just want to finish what I was saying with the altar. I had an incredible interaction with the gal, a buildings and grounds person who was there throughout our event and was incredibly kind and welcoming and was reassured how she loves being able to participate. We were concerned about her being there late, like, hey, we need to hurry up and get out of here now that we're done. And just, could not have been a kinder, more welcoming individual. Yeah. So again, it's like with everything in life, it's not an all black and white issue, because there is good that's being done here, but the amount to which you also were subject to, I don't want to say stuck in the middle, because you never played that victim role, but it was eye-opening what was being exposed in local politics and the role that the pastors and these influential churches are playing in those politics. And that is why you ended up in the position that you were, tangoing, as you would say, with all of these people.
And it was abuse. I don't care what anybody else says. You're never going to convince me otherwise. It was pure and simple abuse. You take your leadership roles in the community and you say something about a candidate and you allow that lie to be spread. That is abusing somebody that doesn't have the same platform that you do.
Yeah.
So,
and it was coming at you from, I know we're wrapping this up, but it was coming at you from every angle because it was local media. It was the guys that already hold office. It was the entire KCRCC, which is, a giant. Yeah. And they control a lot of the methods and means. I mean, there really wasn't any aspect to the campaign where you were not up against a giant and a machine.
By the people that claim they align with the same values and belief. And that's to me, I was shocked by how courteously I was treated by people that were on the opposite side of the aisle, the Democrats.
Well, and that's why then even that's going to be used against you. Can say then even that was used against you because who is this guy Wilson anyway? He's just he's a rhino. All right. Well,
this is a long one.
It is. That was the Power Player Pastors of Kootenai County series. So what you're going to want to do is stick around for the Liberty Without Compromise podcast to see where we go from here, because there is still a lot to expose, probably never ending.
2025, we will continue our weekly broadcasts Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Facebook, X, and YouTube.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much for listening to this episode 9 of the Liberty Without Compromise podcast. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. And like I said, this has been the special series, Power Player Pastors of Kootenai County. If you want to listen from the beginning, do that on episodes 1 through 9. It's going to keep you busy for a while. Great while you're driving around or doing your job in the background. Listen and subscribe at libertywithoutcompromise.com or wherever you get your shows.
Now remember, stay strong and courageous. May God bless you all.